your blessing upon this council. Help and prosper its work for the advancement and benefit of its people, so that peace and happiness, unity and justice may be established amongst us all. Amen. Manningham City Council acknowledges the Wurundjeri people as the traditional custodians of the land we now know as Manningham. We pay our respects to Wurundjeri elders past and present and value the ongoing contribution to the cultural heritage of Manningham. Manningham Council would also like to acknowledge the contribution made to Manningham over the years by people of diverse backgrounds and cultures. I'd like to welcome all members of the public who may be joining us online tonight to observe our proceedings. Obviously, as a result of the current COVID restrictions in place, this council meeting is being held virtually. The health and safety of our community and employees is our priority during these uncertain times, and we regularly review the conduct of our meetings, and we hope to, subject to easing of restrictions of course, be able to invite the community back to the council chambers for our next meeting, and we'll keep you up to date on our website. As with all council meetings, we are taking questions from the public and encourage you to submit your questions in accordance with our normal practice. Our CEO will read out any questions received and a response will be provided where we have the information to hand. If we're unable to provide a meaningful response, we will take your question on notice and provide a response in writing. We'll deal with a maximum of 2 questions per person and 2 questions on any one issue. If you have more than 2 questions, please submit these additional questions through the normal channels in writing. Council meetings are conducted in accordance with our governance rules. I will introduce each item of business as listed on the agenda, calling it by number and reading the title. I'll then call for a mover and a seconder of a motion on the item before opening any debate. Only councillors are able to join the debate on an item. Councillors may adopt the officer's recommendation in the report or propose amendments and supplementary motions. Item 2, apologies and request for leave of absence. I'll now confirm our councillor attendance. Councillor Anna Chen, you just need to unmute. Councillor Chen.
My apology, present.
Thank you. Councillor Deirdre Diamante.
Present.
Thank you. Councillor Jeff Goff.
Present.
Thank you. Councillor Michelle Kleinert.
Present.
Thank you. Councillor Carly Lang.
Present.
Thank you. Councillor Thomas Lightbody.
Present.
Thank you. And Councillor Laura May.
Present.
Thank you. And Councillor Stephen May.
Present.
Thank you. There are no apologies. Councillor, could you please confirm by a show of hands that you can see and hear everyone? Thank you, councillors. Item 3, which is prior notification of conflict of interest. No prior notifications of conflict of interest have been received, councillors. Would anyone like to give a notice of a conflict of interest now? Thank you. Thank you, councillors. Item 4, confirmation of minutes. Do I have a mover? Councillor Anna Chen.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I move that the minutes of the council meeting held on 29th June 2021 be confirmed.
Thank you, Councillor Chen. And do I have a seconder?
I second the motion.
Thank you, Councillor Lang. I will put that motion. Those in favour? And that is carried unanimously. Thank you, councillors. Item 5, presentations. 5.1, the passing of Miss Doreen Stowe's AM PSM JP. Councillor, it's with deep sadness that I must inform you of the recent passing of Miss Doreen Stowe's AM PSM JP. Ms Stowes was Chief Executive Officer of Domcare for 19 years before retiring in April 2020. She'll be remembered for her formidable leadership in strengthening Manningham's service system and for her important contribution to the Manningham community. Prior to this, Ms Stowes worked for the Victorian Department of Health and Human Services for 25 years and held management positions across several program areas. It is through these positions she was able to establish strategic partnerships for the benefit of communities and advocate in the areas of family, children and social support services. Ms Stokes was awarded 2 Australian Honour Awards, a Member of the Order of Australia, AM, in 2013 and a Public Service Medal, PSM, in 1995. Ms Stokes has had a long association with Manningham Council. She made a significant contribution to our community and she was passionate and committed and respected by all. Do I have a mover?
I so move, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Goff. You'd like to move. Could I get you to read the motion in full, please?
I'd like to move that Council place on record its sadness at the recent passing of Ms. Doreen Stokes, AM, PSM, JP, record its appreciation for the contribution by Ms. Stokes to the Manningham Council and the broader community, and extend its sympathy and condolences to Ms. Stokes' family at this very difficult time.
Thank you, Councillor Goff. And do I have a seconder for the motion? Thank you, Councillor Kleinert. Councillor Goff, would you like to speak to the motion?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, and I'd like to place on record on behalf of, like everyone will, on behalf of Council and the Manningham community, great sadness, but also put on record the wonderful work that Doreen has done in her role, especially as the CEO of DonCare over the past 19 years, and her involvement in that sector of our community for all of that time. If I can recall going back to the start, I actually came to know Doreen quite well very early on, and especially she was known because she was working at places like Winlayton, and a lot of staff that I have taught with also were at Winlayton, and her good name came to Manningham, and we were really I suppose, very appreciative of the fact that her skills and her ability were applied into DonCare. She brought DonCare from an organisation that did a great deal of good in our community and was a small organisation, and brought it up to relevant standards and brought in programs and increased the size of the work that DonCare did, and took it outside just normal council grants, but grants from other levels of government, and made it into the organisation it is. It's no easy task to do that, and especially in the area that DonCare operates under, and that is there are a number of staff that are in paid positions, and there are a plethora of people in our community that are volunteers. And the only other organisation I can equate it to is places like the CFA, where you have professional people and volunteers working together. And it is a very difficult task, and Doreen was up to the challenge of bringing and working harmoniously with both groups of workers at DonCare, the actual volunteers and the paid people who are working for DonCare. Doreen lived her work as well. So she wasn't just there leading the organisation in rhetoric or getting other people to do things. She involved herself. And I think if there was an event to go to and an event that could promote DonCare, Doreen would be at that event. So I don't think there are any council events that council put on that Doreen didn't show up and represent and campaign and advocate for DonCare and for the work that the people were doing. And the other fantastic thing with Doreen was that anyone that was working in that organisation were given the recognition and the praise and the ability to work together with everyone else in that organisation. And it takes a person with special skills, and Doreen did have those. It's very sad that it seems so recently that we held a vigil for her with regard to the work that she'd done in Manningham, and again that was in April. So we were in sort of lockdown. So that was sort of a little bit on the remote side of things, and unfortunately she passed away more recently. But she will be remembered, and not only by the people that she worked with, but especially by the people that were helped by the services of Don Care, and she will remain a great figure in that organisation forever. So that's all I'd like to say, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Goff. Councillor Kleinert.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, I too pay tribute to the life of Doreen Stoves, an innovative and passionate person, a leader in our community, and remembering her from the first time that I met her to the hundreds of community events that she would always be at. And she was so well connected, well loved, such an advocate, and will be greatly missed. And it should be noted that when I first came to council, I thought every council had a Don Care. And I came very quickly to realise that we were so unique. And it wasn't just the fact of all that Don Care provided for the community. It was the fact how she was the lifeblood of absolutely taking it to the next level and seeing every opportunity for funding, for where she saw a need. She took it on personally and was very active. And it's incredible. Well over 300 volunteers at Don Care, and that's no easy feat. And yet her love for each and every one of those volunteers, and even remembering for those that remember the Templestowe Don Care op shop, when a beloved long-term resident had passed away, and Kitty and Doreen just did all that she could to make sure that everything, she just went above and beyond because it was her family, and that she'll forever be remembered. She leaves a legacy, and it's something that she had really dearly wanted, was that she would never be forgotten. She really loved people. She loved to be loved, and that is one thing that the family can have comfort from, is the fact that Doreen Stoves absolutely loved Manningham, and Manningham absolutely unequivocally loved her. So thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Kleinert. Any other councillors like to speak to the motion? Councillor Stephen May.
Yes, thanks, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to reiterate and support the previous comments from Councillors Goff and Kleinert, and just remember my first meeting with Doreen Stoves shortly after being elected at the end of 2008, and she made an incredibly passionate and effective argument for increased funding for Don Care, given the remarkable amount of work it did. And I remember at the time thinking, it's incredible that we've got this organisation and that council's only putting in perhaps $300,000 or $400,000 a year for all the outputs that it was delivering. And over her 19 years at Don Care, there would have been more than 1,000 different volunteers who came in the door and added to that. I remember at the time being amazed that 37% of its revenue was from its op shops. So Doreen was incredibly entrepreneurial in sourcing funding from not just from council and not just from state and federal, all three levels of government supported Don Care, but she also had these op shops where the volunteers could work, and it raised significant money for Don Care's operations. I found that it was a tragedy that the funeral had to be cancelled because of COVID. I mean, it was limited to 10 at White Lady out in Croydon, when there would have been up to 300 at Bramley and Warrandyte if it had gone ahead. But there was over 100 really passionate messages left after the live stream of the funeral service. It was a really remarkable service. The tributes, the stories of Doreen leaving school at 13 to going into caring, and all her remarkable history of taking on dozens and dozens of foster children, finishing up adopting 5. So I think that she's just done a power of work. It was only in June that she finally retired from her last volunteer gig, which was as the chair of Refuge Victoria, Victoria's largest refuge for women fleeing domestic violence. So she left Don Care in April 2019, but she was continuing to serve and volunteer in the community right up until last month. a remarkable individual, passionate, energetic, entrepreneurial, and we won't see the like of her again. And I think it's really good that the council is acknowledging Doreen Stoves in this way tonight.
Thank you, Councillor Main. Would anyone else like to speak to the motion? I've got Councillor Laura Main, then Councillor Lang, and then Councillor Chen. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Doreen was a community leader who lived her values. She was a force of nature, and you always knew when she was in the room, and she never stopped advocating for those in need. She had a particular interest for the wellbeing and welfare of children and young people of Manningham, and her background as a family therapist enhanced her knowledge and her understanding of the wellbeing of children and how important it was to nurture resilience in young people. I'd just like to add, as Council's been saying, her passing is a significant loss and does leave an enormous void, and you really wonder if there will ever be another Doreen Stoves. Our heart goes out to her family, who must be grieving such a sudden and unexpected loss. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Laura Main. Councillor Carly Lang.
Thank you. And a lot of my fellow councillors have said the same thing and said majority of it, but I think it's just worth acknowledging that she was a very unique and amazing person. She cared for those who needed care the most. She was a voice for those who needed a voice. She was a home for those who needed a home. She was alongside those who needed to have someone alongside them. And even though her body might not be with us, her spirit will live on. There is nothing that will stop the impact that she's had. There's nothing that will stop the voice that she's had. And there is nothing that will stop the leadership that she had. And we can all take note and live up to that leadership. And our deep condolences to the family and friends at this time. And her funeral was really a tribute to everything that she believed and lived wholeheartedly, and does through her family as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Lang. Councillor Chen.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I remember that as a new councillor at that time, it was a summer afternoon. I bumped into Doreen at Don't Care reception. She invited me to her office to have a chat. And I went there. I was then immediately attracted to the number and variety of our ornaments and figurines she had collected and put in her office. Because I'm always fascinated with owls. And that afternoon, we talk about social problems, bridging the gaps, and of course, a lot of hours. And actually, as a new councillor, I always think that Manningham is a very wealthy community. We have no problem, but I learned a lot from her that afternoon. And I was shocked at that time that we had that kind of social issues in our community. It was actually a very valuable conversation I had. So I'm very lucky to have that conversation with her at that time. And I know that Doreen commenced as a CEO at Don't Care in the year 2001. At that time, the organization's annual income was only $303,000. 19 years later, who knows, the revenue was over 3 million. And Don't Care has created a culture of inclusion, innovation, and acceptance, and supports the most disadvantaged and vulnerable members of our community. Someone as special as Doreen will never be forgotten, and she will remain in our hearts, and she will forever be missed. So yeah, it was my pleasure to know Doreen, and it is our very, very fortunate community to have Doreen as one of our community members. Thank you. And you will be missed.
Thank you, Councillor Chen. Would any other councillors like to talk to the motion? Thank you, Councillor Diamonte.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I first met Doreen when I was a judge for the Manningham Business Excellence Awards, and Councillor Stephen Mayne spoke about her entrepreneurship. I will remember Doreen, as the other councillors have said, as a compassionate, warm, generous, loving person, but she was extremely quick, very quick-witted, a very intelligent person, and I think a very wily businesswoman. And when, just like Councillor Anna Chen said, when I first learned that because of Manningham's socio-economic status, that the Dongcare receives significantly less government funding than some of our neighbouring municipalities. And just the battle that she has to face, and that Dongcare and now Gary has to face all the time to get funding, and how clever, and it's not just the clever financial models that they put in place with the op shops, but other very clever ways of getting resources, getting in people, getting in students and volunteers and working on different projects. I think I will remember her, as I said, not just as an exceedingly generous, caring woman that walked the talk, but also as a very clever businesswoman. And she inspired me. In fact, one of the reasons why I even considered a councillor role was to contribute to the community in a very small part, like Doreen does. So she will be very sorely missed.
Thank you, Councillor Diamante. Would anyone else like to speak to the motion? I'll speak to the motion. As we've heard, Doreen was a completely unique individual and a passionate advocate for the community. I don't think when I first met Doreen, she was definitely on her game in terms of pointing out the need for council to support Dongcare, and also educating me as a new councillor, as she would have done to all the councillors at that point, about the fantastic work that Dongcare was doing, and that Doreen was essentially many times initiating. I had the honour of being the chair of the Emergency Management Committee in last term of council, and there was a tragic accident in our near the end of our first year in council, and I remember Doreen presenting how she had personally actually offered counselling to a whole lot of people who are involved in that accident, and the positive outcomes that or as positive as you could get in that situation, because of her professional background and her passion and her compassion. And I think it's a hallmark of Doreen was that ability to not just manage a great organisation and take it from humble beginnings to the key service in Manningham, but also to be able to have the direct compassion and ability to work with people one-on-one, and she will be sorely missed. And on behalf of council, we do extend our sincerest sympathies and condolences to her family. I will now put that motion. Those in favour, please raise your hands. And that is carried unanimously. Thank you, councillors. Well, councillors, moving on to 5.2, Tokyo Olympic Games acknowledgement. I'd like to acknowledge especially our Manningham resident, Mr. Brendan Smith, who won a bronze medal for Australian swimming in the men's 400 individual medley at the Tokyo Olympic Games just the other night. So congratulations to Brendan on your remarkable achievement. And on behalf of council, we wish all the athletes competing in Tokyo all the very best. And it was an exciting race. I did get to watch that one. So congratulations, Brendan. Moving on, we have item 6, petition 6.1, petition to close for the closure of Arundel Road Park Orchards. It's regarding the closure of Arundel Road's Park Orchards. Do I have a mover?
I move the motion, Mr. Mayor.
Yes, could you read the motion, Councillor Lang?
Thank you. I move that the petition for 49 signatories requesting council to reconsider its position on the proposal to close Arundel Road Park Orchards at the intersection of Park Road by further considering the traffic flow and the alternatives to closure be received and referred through to the appropriate officer for consideration. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Lang. And do I have a seconder for the motion? Councillor Lightbody, thank you. Councillor Lang, do you need to talk to the motion?
No, thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Lightbody. Any other councillors would like to speak to the motion? I will put that motion. Those in favour? And that is carried unanimously. Thank you, councillors. Item 7, question time from the public. We have received 2 questions for tonight's council meeting. At this time, anyone submitting questions to council will have their question read out by our CEO. And our questions tonight are from Ms. Helen Jersevic, OAM. So if I could get the CEO.
Thank you, Mayor. So the first question to the Mayor, Councillor Andrew Conlon, regarding the 2021-22 council budget, as highlighted in the July edition of Manningham, the Community That Matters publications. Under highlights for 21-22 in the budget, the section support for our community, it was stated initiatives to support a connected and inclusive community. Do any initiatives in the above statement support seniors within the community? And if so, what initiatives and how do they support seniors?
Well, thank you, Helen, for your question. And through the process of our council plan, which I know that you are passionate about, we have a number of initiatives that we hope to support. And I will ask our Director for City Planning and Community, Angelo Carambas, to just inform us further on that. Thank you, Angelo.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you, Helen, for your question. As you'd be aware, the budget is closely aligned with our council plan, and the council plan identifies a range of themes and activities to support enhanced social connection for all parts of our community, including for seniors. Some of the examples I'm happy to go through include the provisions being made for the development of a new community infrastructure plan to consider what current and future residents need in terms of facilities out in the community. And that obviously will include seniors. Our new library strategy will also set out direction for these really important multi-generational facilities across our city. Our placemaking work will continue to help develop more vibrant neighbourhoods where local people, including seniors, can gather safely and connect. And also a range of improvements to public lighting and safety in shopping centres will be undertaken, especially where pedestrians interact with vehicles. This will have a direct benefit for seniors, particularly where we have seen some recent accidents with dire consequences. And also our work on an updated transport action plan will look at the needs of all residents to move around the municipality and beyond more effectively. So other, I suppose, more senior specific programs and activities that are included in the budget include the ongoing support for the Manningham Positive Ageing Alliance Group and the Manningham Dementia Alliance Group. So both these groups are supported by community representatives and organisations who are focused primarily on promoting positive attitudes and support for older people in Manningham. To support physical and social connectedness, a range of inclusive activities will also be developed to host what we're calling a come and try activities in the second half of 2021 aimed at senior citizens, and a new initiative to support and develop the IT literacy and skills of older residents and build their confidence to connect with family and friends through digital technologies such as iPads will also continue, and that's obviously critical in these times of ongoing lockdowns. And finally, I'd highlight that Council has committed to the anti-ageism campaign, which will continue to raise awareness and respect for older people and challenge the negative stereotypes and promote inclusiveness. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Angelo. And Helen, I'd also like to add that on tonight's agenda, actually, we will be considering a draft health and wellbeing strategy for the city, which will allow the public to have further input into those areas that you might be interested in, I think. So I encourage you to keep an eye on that and hopefully provide some feedback on that particular strategy. Mr. CEO, was there a second question?
There was, thank you, Mayor. Under highlights for the next 4 years, it was stated renewing fleet with over 50 more environmentally sustainable vehicles such as electric vehicles or hybrids. Is there provision for a community bus to transport seniors with mobility and health issues to venues to connect them with their community in the current or future council fleet? And if so, what month, in what year will this occur?
Thank you, Helen, again for your question. As we explained at the last council meeting, we're looking seriously at your previous requests, and I will ask Mr. Angelo Carambas again to just clarify the where we are at in terms of your question. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor, and thanks again, Helen, for your question. As advised in the June council meeting, when you asked a similar question, council is considering its options with regard to community transport for seniors with mobility challenges. So that work's currently underway. So officers are looking at the service needs and gaps in the community and in our current community transport service model. And this work will include understanding what the local needs are in the context of the changing transport network in the city of Manningham by the state government. So once this information has been collated, which will be later this year, the bill will be presented to council for their consideration, and further updates will be provided at that time. Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Angelo. There are no more questions, I believe, Mr. CEO. Thank you. Item 8. Admissions of urgent business. There are no items of urgent business. Item 9, planning permit applications. There are no planning permit applications for consideration. Item 10, city planning and community. 10.1, Manningham Community Partnership Grant Program 2021 to 2025. Do I have a mover for the motion? Thank you, Councillor Carly Lang.
I move that the recommendation be adopted, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Lang. And do I have a seconder for the motion?
I'll second that, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Stephen Mayne. Councillor Lang, would you like to speak to the motion?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I thought it might be appropriate just to identify what the Community Partnership Grant Program, the main funding priorities for the proposed for the 2021 to 2025. So Council's Community Grant Program is for provides funding for non-for-profit community groups and organisations who deliver programs to support our communities. It will cover things like the annual grants, the multi-year partnership grants, and also small grant opportunities. What we're looking at tonight is the 2021 to 2025 Community Grants Program. And I thought I might just read some of the funding priorities that are based for promotion. So it's youth mental health, climate change adoption, reconciliation, prevention of family violence, legal services to support at-risk residents, improve social and emotional well-being, increased active living, increased connection to and engagement in community life, and access to healthy eating and reduction of injury and harm. So these priority outcomes give scope to initiatives and activities, but not necessarily limited to these, but like for festivals and events, community and cultural activities, emergency support and relief, and support services for residents. And applicants for the community partnership grants need to be able to demonstrate one or more of these proposed, or at least one of these proposed funding priority outcomes. And as in previous years, the officers will support community organisations through workshops and training, and also make them aware of the priority funding priorities. So I just ask council to support this motion, as it is about helping our community groups to provide services, activities and events that are promoted for our residents and their health and wellbeing. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Lang. Councillor Stephen Mayne.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Look, I think it's been very well summarised by Councillor Lang. I think that the changes from previous years, I think it'll be interesting to see if we do get any good applicants in areas like reconciliation and climate change, where this funding program hasn't historically supported those particular areas. So we're looking forward to seeing lots of the incumbent partners, be it the community houses, Doncare, Heidi, to all be active participants again, as well as potentially new applicants, not just from Manningham, but even from further afield, as we look to diversify the funding in accordance with our health and wellbeing strategy and our broader council plan. So the most any organisation can get over the 4-year for the community partnerships is $50,000 a year, or $200,000, and a lot can be done with $200,000, and a lot has been done in the past by our excellent community partners. So I'd like to thank the officers who've worked up this process. I think it was sensible to do the interim 6-month grants to some of the incumbents, so we could get the council plan sorted and then move into a 4-year cycle, which is 21-25 rather than 20-24. So get your skates on, community. In the next few weeks, we're going live shortly, and then it'll be open, and then we're looking forward to making the awards and the announcements at the back end of this year. So good money on the line, more than $550,000 a year in this program. It's a well-funded program by our ratepayers, and we're really looking forward to the quality of the partners coming forward through this program.
Thank you, Councillor Mayne. Are there any speakers against the motion? There being no other speakers against, would anyone else like to speak to the motion? Being no other speakers, I'll put that motion. Those in favour? And that is carried unanimously. Thank you, councillors. And so we move on to 10.2, the draft health and wellbeing strategy for 2021 to 2025. Do I have a mover? Councillor Laura Mayne.
I move that the recommendation be adopted.
Thank you. Do I have a seconder? Councillor, I'll take Councillor Lightbody. I saw your hand first. Thank you. And so back to you, Councillor Laura Mayne.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So I'll just outline what the strategy is and provide some context. So this was formerly known as the Healthy City Strategy, and has been prepared in alignment with our council priorities as set out in the council plan, which you might have heard about in one of the previous council meetings. It seeks to respond to the impacts of COVID, as well as adopt an integrated approach to healthy planning to improve access to facilities, services, programs, and organisations that play a role in improving health in our community. The strategy addresses the two council plan goals to have a healthy, safe and resilient community, as well as a connected and inclusive community. And the strategy is trying to achieve those goals through a framework of 7 ideas. Just briefly, those are to improve social and emotional wellbeing, which is addressing mental health, especially youth mental health, which is something I'm glad to see and is a high priority for council. Also to increase healthy eating, increase active lifestyle, increase adaptation to the health impacts of climate change, such as adapting to the impacts, and like education about the issue, as well as reducing injury and harm, such as addiction to drugs, alcohol, gambling, prevention of family violence, that being both violence against women and elder abuse, and finally to increase connection and engagement with community life. Yes, a lot of those were very similar to some of our key areas in the community grants, which you also heard earlier from Councillor Carly Lang. Yeah, and just along the lines of inclusivity, the strategy is aiming to look through many lenses, such as different ages and stages, all community cohorts, such as people of diverse backgrounds, LGBTQIA+, Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people and people with disabilities, as well as gender, as well as the impact of intersectionality, which is the compounding effect of multiple reasons to be marginalised. Just finally, I'd like to thank the officers for their hard work with this strategy. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Laura Main. Councillor Lightbody. You're on mute.
I was just going to say, I think Councillor Main summed it up pretty well. I don't think there's anything I could possibly add. But I'd like to thank Councillor Laura Main for what she said.
Thank you, Councillor Lightbody. Would anyone like to speak against the motion? There being no speakers against. Oh, Councillor Chen.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just want to raise a couple issues. And because we all know that Manningham is known for being one of the healthiest cities in Victoria, of course, there is still also room for improvement. And for example, in the draft document, we can see that between 2015 to 2020, Manningham experienced around 7,789 hospital admissions due to fall. And the majority occurs in 80 to 89 age cohort and representing 35% of the total number of admissions. And this number is significantly higher than the Victoria percentage, which is only 26%. When you think of 35% compared to 26%, we just can't ignore the numbers. So fall in the home and fall in the community are a leading cause of injury for older people. So this is alarming and concerning and must be recognized and addressed as soon as possible. And also Manningham is a very diverse multicultural community, and 40% of residents were born overseas. And guess what? 35% of our residents were born in a non-English speaking country. So we want our residents to feel safe and are safe in our communities. Feeling safe extends to addressing racism in our community and ceasing discrimination and hatred towards another person because of the color of their skin, their cultural background, and where they were born. Unfortunately, around 1 in 5 Australians say that they have experienced race hate talk, and more than 1 in 20 Australians say they have been physically attacked because of their race. So during COVID-19, increased rates of racial abuse have been reported, and there are many, many incidents have never been reported. So I'm glad that the council and this report recognized the adverse impact of racism to our community, and it is timely for council to actively raise awareness about racism and take practical steps to counter racism. So I'm glad that it has been mentioned, and I think that most of the majority of our core community would like to see that it actually in our healthy city strategy now. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Chen. Are there any speakers for or against the motion at this point? Councillor Lang and then Councillor Diamante.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just wanted to say that the Manningham, the 2021 and 25 Manningham Health and Wellbeing Plan, which Councillor Laura Main summarised fantastically, that it is going out for public exhibition till the 15th of August. So that's till the 15th of the next month. And so I really highly encourage our community to review and provide feedback on the strategy. the strategy fully acknowledges that the benefit of the greatest benefit to our community's health and well-being is incorporating all aspects, so social, economic, natural, and environment, and which for me and for my constituents of the Green Wedge, this area is of high importance to our health and well-being and is vital and unique and highly valuable resource. So it would be something that I would just draw attention to. Just to let everyone know that public feedback will be considered and incorporated into a final health and wellbeing strategy, which will then be presented to Council in September. So thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Lang. Councillor Diamonte.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So while I support the strategy going out for consultation, I do note that there will be some further detail added, particularly around the support of older adults, recognising more than 30% of Manningham residents are over 65. Councillor Laura Main spoke about elder abuse, and there will be further detail that council officers will add to metrics around elder abuse and what we can do as a council and the community to support that terrible form of abuse. When we talk about social and emotional well-being, a cohort that has been significantly impacted are the older adults in loneliness. And I noted that Angelo talked about some initiatives in our strategy to try and bring the community together and older people together, but loneliness in the elderly is a huge issue that we need to look at in this healthy strategy. And also dementia. So we are a dementia-friendly city. Angelo noted that we are part of the Local Dementia Alliance, and I look forward to more details added in this strategy about how we can actually build on that, not just as a council, but even businesses in Manningham, how we can be more aware of people suffering from dementia, and how we can be supportive as a community. And extending what Councillor Lang said, as this goes out to the community for consultation, I really invite our residents to nominate metrics, particularly on those three areas that I outlined, because the community, the older adults, they're the ones that are the closest to these issues, and their families that support them. So I really do encourage them to give us some ideas on how to address some of those issues.
Thank you, Councillor Diamonte. Are there any other speakers? Councillor Stephen May.
Thank you, Mayor. Look, I think everyone's spoken really well, and I concur with everything which has been said. The only little additional point I was going to make was to say it's terrific that we've got some mentions of gambling in our health and wellbeing strategy. As councillors would know, Australians lose more per capita gambling than any other country in the world at $24 billion a year. And the pokies are 14 billion of that. Now, in the case of Manningham, traditionally we lose in the 50 millions a year. For the last decade, it's been around in the 50s, and the peak, I think, was 58 million. The figures just came out last Friday, and the 2021 losses were down to 30.5 million in Manningham. And that was reflecting of the statewide drop from 2.7 billion normally to 1.56 billion. So that was a $1.2 billion saving on the pokies statewide from lockdown. So one of the few upsides of lockdown has been reduced harm and injury in the Manningham community from world record levels of gambling. And in Manningham's case, our losses are above the state average in per capita terms. And when you think about Burundara, it's only 23 million a year. We're 55 million a year. So it'd be great to see a little bit more in the final plan, perhaps mentioning this data specifically, setting targets about permanently getting it below 50 million a year. But overall, I think it's an excellent plan. Thanks to the officers. Looking forward to hearing feedback from the community and then approving the final plan in a couple of months.
Thank you, Councillor Stephen Mayne. Are there any other speakers? There being no other speakers, I'll put that motion. Those in favour? And that is carried unanimously. Again, thank you, councillors. And we move on to item 11, city services. There are no city services reports. Item 12, shared services. There are no shared services reports, which brings us to item 13, Chief Executive Officer. 13.1, informal meetings of councillors. Do I have a mover for that motion? Councillor Chen.
I move that the recommendation be adopted.
And a seconder? Thank you, Councillor Kleinert.
No, Mr. Mayor, can I move that with a slight amendment? There's a slight...
Would you like to, yeah, could you just explain the amendment? And I'll ask Councillor Chen if she will accept that amendment.
Sure. It's, Councillor Chen, it's just with the informal meeting of councillors. It's a meeting of a tree inspection held on the 25th of June. Item 2 did not occur. It was only item 1. So we didn't get to the second destination. So if that can be amended in the minutes, we're still yet to have that meeting.
Councillor Chen, you'll accept that amendment? I'll put that amended motion. With that amendment. Is there any other speakers against the amendment specifically? No, I'll put that motion as amended. Those in favour? Thank you, councillors, and that is carried unanimously. Thank you. And moving on to 13.2, documents for sealing. Do I have a mover? Councillor Kleinert.
I'm going to now find it. Here we go. Mr. Mayor, I move the recommendation, and I'm just checking that I don't need to read it all.
No, you don't.
Fantastic.
So you move the recommendation be adopted? Great. Do I have a seconder?
Second.
I've got Councillor Lightbody. This is great. I feel like I'm at the Olympics. I'm judging first and second. So, Councillor Lightbody, you won again. Carly, you're going to have to lift your game. I'll put that motion. Those in favour? And that is carried unanimously. Thank you, councillors. Item 14, notice of motion. Item 14.1, notice of motion by Councillor Stephen Mayne, nomination number 3 of 2021. There's an alternate motion also in the papers. Do I have a mover? Councillor Stephen Mayne.
Mr. Mayor, I move that the motion as printed in the agenda be moved with the removal of dot point D. This means the motion will read that council request officers to increase the level of disclosure in the quarterly financial reports for the new financial year which come to council by including A, a quarter end balance sheet, B, a one-page summary of council's cash investments, and C, a summary of developer contributions which have been received by council during the quarter.
Thank you, Councillor Stephen Mayne. And do I have a seconder for that motion? Councillor Diamonte, thank you. Councillor Stephen Mayne.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. Look, this is a pretty minor little tweak to the regular quarterly disclosures. Council practice across the state is all over the place, from over 100 pages if you read the Burundara quarterly report. Ours is, I think, 9 pages. It's still quite comprehensive, but this motion simply requests that 3 specific new metrics be regularly reported to the public and to the council. One is a balance sheet, which I understand is quite easy to access from the finance system. So it just gives you a March 30, 31, June 30, September 30 update of the balance sheet from the cash balance to net assets and those sorts of things. We do as a council have a healthy cash balance. And I think historically, perhaps a decade ago, there used to be a one-pager in the financial report setting out the investments. So I think resurrecting that, given that we've got over 80 million in cash, I think it would be useful to have reported back to council quarterly, just a one-page summary of what we're doing with our cash. Is it term deposits? Is it the bonds? It's a big number. And so I think some reporting on how we're managing the investments You know, it'll be pretty disappointing low interest rates at the moment, but down the track it could get up to being, you know, well over $1 million a year in interest. So it'd be good to have that. And I think developer contributions as well. You do get some lump sum 6-figure payments that come in as developments on Doncaster Hill get settled and finished and those sorts of things. So it is useful to read that oh, that big development's just finished and there's a $400,000 check from that development. I know some other councils do that. So I think it's just a useful metric to get, along with all the things that are already there, such as the CEO's expenses, the council's expenses, and all the performance action items against the council plan. So pretty minor little transparency measure, nothing wrong with the current system, but we have agreed in our council plan we'll look for ways we can even dial up the transparency a bit more. Manningham's already a very transparent council, and this motion, in a non-controversial way, will inch that goal further forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Main. Councillor Diamonte. Would anyone like to speak against the motion? And I've just lost one councillor off. So I'll just wait for a minute. Councillor Chen doesn't seem to be with us at the moment. So if the officers could just let us know when Councillor Chen is available. Thank you. I will pause the meeting. Welcome back, Councillor Chen.
Sorry, the wind blew. I just lost connection.
No problem. Councillor Chen, I don't know if you heard Councillor Stephen Main's speech there for the motion. Would you like to speak for or against the motion?
No.
Okay, thank you.
I'm fine, yes.
Are there any other councillors who'd like to speak against the motion? Anyone else like to speak for the motion? I'll put that motion. Those in favour? And that is carried unanimously. Thank you, councillors. And we move on to item 15, urgent business. There are no items of urgent business. Item 16, question time from councillors. Councillors, does anyone have a question for the officers, for the CEO? There being no questions, I think that's no questions. We'll move on. Item 17, confidential reports, and there are no confidential reports. Thank you everyone for being with us. There are no further items on the agenda, and I'd like to thank you for taking the time to watch this almost 1 hour broadcast, and thank you for your support for the council, and I hope to see you soon. So with that, I declare the meeting closed, and hopefully everyone will get back to supporting Australia in the Olympics. Cheers.